Another simple leather project that I've worked on this week is I was recovering some seats for some dining room chairs. The old ones were cloth and a dog had chewed them. The new ones I covered with leather. At the customer's request, he wanted me to, hopefully he thinks the dog won't chew on it as much if it's leather, but I'm not so sure about that. I've not met many vegetarian dogs yet, but that's what the customer wanted. So the first step on it is always trying to remove the old seat cover, the old cloth in this case, and not tear it up too badly, because then you can use it for a pattern when you go to cut your pieces of leather out. And this mostly is just a lot of time with a screwdriver or a small pry bar, trying to pry out all the staples that somebody with an air nailer put in, because it's really easy to put a lot of staples in with an air nailer. This process usually also involves a lot of swearing, but in this case I was making YouTube videos, so I decided to omit that. A pair of pliers can be helpful to pull out those staples that are sticking up a little bit, but you can't quite get a hold of with the screwdriver. All the tools used for this are various, very simple ones that you can get at pretty much any hardware store. A screwdriver, small pry bar, a pair of pliers, a scissors that can cut leather, a staple gun to put it all back together with, a small tack hammer, or, well, almost any type of hammer. After you've got all the cloth off, you can go back and clean everything up, pull the last few staples that are sticking up, pull out threads that are stuck. Just kind of generally neaten everything up a little bit. In this case, the foam was still in fairly good shape. The corner was a little chewed up, but the customer didn't want to replace any foam, and I kind of agreed it was still in good enough shape that once I had it covered, you couldn't tell that there was anything wrong with it, so we didn't bother with that. Now on leather, you need to always watch for scars and brands, especially in full grain leathers. If it's been top grained, which means that they've sprayed on a painted on surface, it's usually not as noticeable. But in this case, this is a semi-aniline dyed full grain leather that there's an obvious scar in it. And I've got a piece of poster board that I used that cloth to make a pattern, and I'm just sort of sketching around it with a marker. This piece is a couple inches larger, basically in every different direction, than it needs to be. And that's so that I've got plenty to grab onto to pull it tight whenever I'm stapling it in place. And after I've got it all in place, I'll go back and I'll trim a lot of it off. And I'm cutting this with a pair of shears that's made specifically for cutting leather, but a lighter weight upholstery leather like this, almost any good pair of scissors will cut it. Now there's more complicated ways of doing cushions than these. These just wrap around and staple into place. If it's got welted seams and things like that on it, then that gets to be more of an advanced project. But a wrapped cushion like this is kind of a simple beginner DIY type project that I would say a lot of people could do. Now, we've got our leather pieces cut out, and our cushions all cleaned up. It's time to put it all back together. The way I usually do this is I start with opposing sides. I'll start with like the front of the chair seat and the back of the chair seat, and I'll put a staple in the middle, and I'll pull everything tight across from each other. pull it down tight, stretch it, hold it in place, and staple it. And then I'll do the other two sides, also right in the middle. Pull everything to tighten together. You can see there I've got about 3 inches of leather or so hanging over, and that's actually too much. It'll get in the way of the screws that hold these cushions to the chairs. But like I said, we'll go ahead and trim off some of that leather after we get everything all put together. You see here I'm pulling it tight and making sure that everything's laying smooth before I staple down that last side. If you've got any wrinkles in it at this point, where it looks like it's being stretched one way too much, more than the other, you have to go back and pull staples out and realign everything. Once we got those together, we can start. Basically, you just got to fiddle with the corners a little bit. Kind of pull them tight and pinch the leather in place and staple it and work around that corner, back and forth, trying to smooth it into place as best you can and get all the stretch marks and wrinkles pulled from the upper part that's going to be the cushion and pull it down onto the bottom there where we're stapling it in place. And it's just generally one of those things, the more you work with it, the more you pull at it and pinch it and move it, the more the leather kind of stretches into place, which is one thing that leather is a lot better at on this than cloth. Leather is thicker, so it tends to be a little bit more work to pull and stretch, but it does stretch differently than cloth, and you can get it to kind of take shape a lot easier than you can with cloth. There'll still be some sort of wrinkles on these corners because they're pretty sharp bends. Again, there's more complicated ways to do this than the way I'm doing it in this one. But for this cushion, this is exactly what we needed to do. And once you got the corners figured out, you can kind of staple up everything that's in between them. You can see I'm doing a little bit of the trimming here. And I actually take those pieces that I pinched up and trim them back down flat. You also might notice that I'm working one side of the corner and then the other side of the corner. So I pull in a piece right at the very corner and staple it in the middle, get everything equidistant on each side, and then I work one side of it and then back to the other side of it. Just the easiest way that I've found to do all this is to keep everything nice and straight and neat. And now we've got it all stapled down. I'm trimming it not to the staples, but ½ inch in from the staples or so. You see I'm laying the scissors flat and just cutting those pieces off. They actually will produce wedges cut out, and that takes some of the wrinkles out of everything. And then I go back and finish trimming between those wedges that I just cut by cutting those pinched up pieces. and back to where I started. That's all to that cushion. I've got 3 more to do, and I'll be done with this project.